It's time for your Low Country real estate market update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
Good morning. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Brian Beatty, and over the next hour, we're going to talk all things real estate here in the Low Country. First things first, because I've got a really exciting show for you this week. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff that I'm experiencing right now in our market that I want to weigh in on. So if anything that I say during my show is something that you'd like more information on, or if you would like a no obligation consultation, you'd like to meet with me to discuss your scenario, please reach out to me. My number is 843-345-1273, or you can visit my website, www.listingsincharleston.com. And on that website, you can search the MLS, read some testimonials from past clients, take a look at my sold listings, and of course, learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee. I am a real estate agent Monday to Sunday, and it's a pleasure to be on this program talking with you about what I experience in the field. And I got to say, before I get into the show, that I am blessed to be on this program and blessed to be able to have the opportunity to not just share this information with you and share stories from the real estate field, but also meet with people who listen to this program and help them through their situation. I've had several meetings over the past few weeks where a listener called in or they reached out to me and said, "Hey, Brian, here's my situation. We've either been working with a real estate agent in the past and they haven't gotten the job done, or we have a specific goal in mind. Can you help us accomplish that?" And it's just great to be able to take the market data, share that with you, share stories, and do so all while keeping in mind that we're here to accomplish your goal. So appreciate the opportunity to help keep you informed about our real estate market. Again, reach out to me if there's anything that you'd like to discuss in private. My number is 843-345-1273, and that website is listingsincharleston.com. So what I have for you on this program this hour is a few things. First and foremost, we're gonna talk about just some financial stuff. We're gonna put your financial savvy to the test, and I want to kind of go through this first to get the blood flowing, get some thought sparked here. And then I want to talk about something that I'm getting a lot right now, because we're in a time in our market where inventory is reducing, sales are increasing, prices are starting to increase or are continuing to increase in some areas of Charleston. And the big question is, how do I find the really good deals? Where are the short sales and foreclosures and, deals that I used to be able to buy for 10, 15, 20% off fair market value? I'm going to tell you how to find them. And I'm going to explain to you a few different ways of looking at data to determine whether or not it might be an opportunity for you. So we're going to talk specifically about pre-foreclosure listings on websites like Zillow, what that means, and how to kind of navigate through that process to determine whether or not it's a viable option for you. And then lastly, because I'm dealing with this a lot too, and this happens when markets start to shift upward, they start to again, inventory is down, prices are starting to go up. And one of the big problems that we're always going to face in real estate is just the nature of real estate is pricing, correctly pricing homes. I'm dealing with a lot of people right now that have had their home on the market with a previous agent, and they call me, we go through my marketing plan, they hire me, and 90% of the time we get the job done. But there are occasions where we sit down with a seller and we talk about their pricing strategy, and the pricing is just off. It's just not correct. So I want to talk about two major things. I want to talk about the Zillow Zestimate. What is it? How do we compare that to the fair market value for our house? What does it mean? How is it determined for your house? I'm going to get into that, and I'm going to dedicate the entire last segment to the Zillow estimate for your home, how it's calculated, and then how the appraisal process works. How do we, as real estate agents, identify value for your house? So we're going to get into that as well. So again, 843-345-1273 if I say anything during the show that you'd like more information on, or visit the website listingsincharleston.com. So I told you that I wanted to put your financial savvy to the test, and that's what we're going to do to kind of get things started here. So I wanted to ask you 5 questions just to kind of get the gears grinding a little bit, get the blood flowing. Fact or fiction? It is cheaper to buy a home than it is to rent a home. What do y'all think? Well, 2 weekends ago, we did a live show, and I had Movement Mortgage in, and we went through a few scenarios where we looked at how much a home would cost to rent, and then we looked at a few different financing scenarios for that same house with just an average everyday buyer with average credit, with kind of middle of the road down payment, and it was quite a bit cheaper to purchase the home than it was to rent the home. So when you look at things like the affordability index, which is something that we track and the National Association of Realtors tracks, right now the affordability index is at an all-time high. It was a little bit higher 12 months ago when the interest rates were lower, but it is still, as of right now, at an all-time high. So if you're kind of sitting on that fence, you're on the line between do I rent, do I buy, I'm telling you right now that in most situations, it makes more sense for you to purchase than it does for you to rent. And if you have, again, a specific price range in mind, we are happy to sit down with you, look at your scenario, and run the numbers and look at the actual cost involved over a 3-year process, 5-year process, whatever that length of time is, so that you can see that it does make more sense, especially in a growing market, for you to purchase rather than rent. And that's not to say that, that's not me as a real estate agent saying, hey, I want your business, I want to earn a commission. I'm telling you that if you have the ability to purchase, it makes sense to investigate that route before just unilaterally deciding that it's cheaper to just rent somewhere. So moving on, number 2, most Americans have a rainy day fund. Fact or fiction? Well, unfortunately, it's fiction. Sadly, more than half of Americans do not have a rainy day fund set up, and we're still living kind of in a scenario where we're paycheck to paycheck. We're still struggling in many instances to make ends meet. There are still plenty of homeowners out there with little to no equity or that are still underwater and are behind on their payments. So we're not out of the woods yet. We're in a position right now where, as a market, especially in Charleston, things are on the upswing. So things are looking better. It's not all gray clouds, but we still have a ways to go. So number 3, you should have more than one credit card. Fact or fiction? What do you think? Well, it's a fact. And it says that, there's no right number of credit cards you should have because it all depends on how you use and manage your accounts. But I like the idea of having at least 2. And your main credit card should be a no-fee rewards card where you're getting cash back for your everyday purchases from gas to groceries. And your second card should be a low-interest, high-limit credit card, which should be used as an emergency backup card, although you really should keep it active by using it for dinners or using it for furniture purchases or something like that. But that's going to help kind of boost your credit score so that when it comes time to purchase a home, you can maximize your purchasing power. Number 4, and I'm kind of shooting all over the place, but fact or fiction, prices on consumer goods are down. That's fiction. It actually states that in many areas, consumer good pricing is up, and it's up on things like food, which is about 3% up this year, clothing, which is 5 to 8% above, and homes. So we look at the housing market, of course, in some areas it's up more than others. If you look at Mount Pleasant, it's up 10%. If you look at Somerville, it's up 2%. So it just kind of depends. But that leads me into the last question, fact or fiction. As a nation, we are financially literate. Fact or fiction? And of course, this is all subjective, but the answer is fiction. And it says, off this report that I'm reading, that 19% of us are still spending more than we make. 34% of us still pay only the minimum amount due on our credit cards. 16% of us have been charged a late fee, and 11% of us have used their credit cards for a cash advance. And so you think about this, of course, there are consequences for this behavior, and it's going to kind of catch up with you over time. And so the reason that I'm reading these things off to you is because I'm finding right now that there, especially in the first-time homebuyer market, planning and budgeting is lacking. So I have a report, and it's a very simple report. It's something that you could easily find online if you want to, and if you want to spend some time searching for it, or if you want, you can just contact me, and I have everything laid out in an Excel spreadsheet, ready to go. The formulas are already in there. All you need to do is plug in your income and your expenses, and then from there, you determine what kind of margin you want to have, and it helps you save for things like a down payment, things like closing costs. Say you want to do a renovation on your house. Last weekend, I went over the cost versus value report that was put out by Remodeling Magazine, which I still have a copy of if any of you would like a copy of that. But it went through, say you want to do a project on your house. You want to do a major kitchen remodel. You want to do a bathroom remodel. They followed projects all over the nation to where you can go online and you can look at the project nationwide and what the return on investment was. You can look at it by region. And they followed 33 different renovations in Charleston. And there's actually Charleston-based information on how much you can expect to get as a return on your investment for remodeling. So just talking about some financial stuff, talking about budgeting, talking about just being aware of what you need to do in order to accomplish your goal of either purchasing a home, renovating your property from a financial standpoint. So if you want a copy of either of those reports, go to www.listingsincharleston.com. Reach out to me, and I'll send you those reports right over. Or you can just call me 843-345-1273. When I come back, we're going to talk about how to find deals that are not online, how to find the really good deals. So stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. I'll be right back.
More stimulating talk on real estate matters with Brian Beatty next on 1250 WTMA. Now, here's more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. Thank you for joining me this weekend. I appreciate you tuning in and taking some time with me this morning to discuss and listen to all things real estate here in the Low Country. It's my goal with this show to just provide you with accurate, useful, reliable information so that when it comes time for you to either buy or sell a home, you have the facts, you're at least in the right mindset, and of course, if that is the case, you're thinking of buying or selling a home here in the next few weeks, months, year, whatever the time frame might be, and you'd like to speak with me. I am a top agent. I've been in the top 1% of agents in Charleston since 2009, continue to be, and would love the opportunity to speak with you about your goals to see how I can help you. So the best way to do that is just go to my website, www.listingsincharleston.com, and on that website, a little icon will pop up saying, how can I help you? And you can type in a little message right there, send me something. You can schedule appointments through my website. You can search the MLS. You can take a look at my active listings, my sold listings. And of course, if you're considering selling your home, then you can look at information on my 59-day home sale guarantee at 4.5% commission. So that website, www.listingsincharleston.com, or give me a call, 843-345-1273. So last segment, we talked about just some basic kind of financial questions to provoke some thought and to kind of get the blood flowing this morning. And this segment, I really want to dedicate some time to it. In fact, I might kind of spill over into a second segment on this because I'm getting a lot of phone calls right now from interested buyers, interested investors. You know, we're at a time in our market where inventory is reduced. There's not a lot of options out there, especially in certain markets. You know, let's say downtown Charleston, Mount Pleasant, Isle of Palms. There's just not a lot out there right now. What's out there has been out there for a long time, in some cases several years on and off the market. And so the question is, how do I find those really good deals that you used to see all the time back in 2010, 2011? Well, I'll tell you first that they're not out there as readily available as they were. We're in a different market. In fact, if we look at, I shared the 2013 year-end review report toward the beginning of this year, and I still have a copy of that if you'd like to see it. And it goes into vast detail on every segment of our market, but it has one segment that talks about the distressed properties. And distressed sales only accounted for 18% of our market in 2013, which is down fairly drastically from 2012 and, of course, down from 2011. So there's just a lack of really good buys under market value right now. And that's what happens in a seller's market. There's less sellers selling, there's more buyers buying, and it creates a competitive environment. That's why we're starting to see multiple offers on properties. That's why it's important that if you're a buyer and you're considering making an offer on something, that you want to be pre-approved. You want to show that you're a strong buyer that has the ability to close the deal, to make the purchase, rather than just kind of having someone from Quicken Loans type up a pre-qualification letter. No slight against them, but there's a big difference between a buyer that's been pre-qualified with some, website-based lender and a strong local company that says, hey, we've reviewed their financials and they're good to go. So anyway, sorry for getting off on a tangent. I know you guys want information on how to find this stuff, and I'm going to give it to you. So first and foremost, I want to say that what I'm going to talk about specifically relates to the pre-foreclosure listings that you see on websites like Zillow. I get calls all the time from buyers that say, hey, I saw this house on Zillow. It's in pre-foreclosure. I'd like to go by and see it. Well, just because a property is in pre-foreclosure does not mean it's for sale. So I want to read something off from Zillow here, and then I'm going to dive into what some of these scenarios look like and how they can play out. So it says that the pre-foreclosure stage can yield some real bargains, but most agents agree it is the most difficult stage during which to purchase a distressed home. It says, be aware that a pre-foreclosure property is not necessarily for sale. The pre-foreclosure stage is the period between the time in which a notice of default or a lis pendens has been issued to the homeowner and after the property is sold at a foreclosure auction. So it's the point in time where they receive a notice of default and lis pendens, and then the time that they get foreclosed on. So what you need to understand here is that the owner may be working to cure that default, or he may be hoping for a pre-qualified cash buyer to help him avoid the impending foreclosure, or it might be that he's in over his head and there's nothing he can do and he really has no interest in selling the property. So first things first, I want to tell you what a lis pendens is and what a notice of default is, because that's what triggers Zillow to say, hey, this house is in pre-foreclosure. So this is what a lis pendens is. A lis pendens is a written notice that a lawsuit has been filed concerning real estate involving either title to the property or a claimed ownership interest in it. Recording a lis pendens against the property alerts a potential purchaser or lender that the property's title is in question. So lis pendens is literally Latin for suit pending. And this may refer to any pending lawsuit that or a specific situation with a public notice of litigation that's been recorded in the same location where the title of the real property has been recorded. It goes on to say that the notice serves as a plaintiff's claim on the property so that the sale, mortgage, or encumbrance of the property will not diminish plaintiff's rights to the property should the plaintiff prevail in the case. So lis pendens. The other thing that triggers a pre-foreclosure is a notice of default. And again, we are talking about the pre-foreclosure listings that you see on websites like Zillow. So if I rifled through that, I'm more than happy to create an attachment for the things that I'm discussing and email it right over to you. Just go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. So what is a notice of default and how does that differ from a lis pendens? Well, a notice of default is a notification given to a borrower stating that he or she has not made payments by the predetermined deadline or is otherwise in default on the mortgage contract. Other ways homeowners might be in default is if they don't carry the proper insurance for the property, if they're not paying property taxes as agreed, and it dictates that if the money owed or other breach are not paid back or remedied in a certain amount of time, then the lender might choose to foreclose on that borrower, on that property owner. So the notice of default is simply the notice given to the homeowner that they are in default on their mortgage, whereas a lis pendens could be anything from, it could be a mechanic's lien on the house. It could be that you decided to do a $100,000 renovation on your property and you only paid your contractor $30,000 and the contractor wants his $70,000. So he goes down to the courthouse and he files a lis pendens against you. So that's what that means. So when you're online and you're looking at Zillow or any of these other websites, and please do not pay for these types of lists. There are plenty of companies out there that will say, hey, get the pre-foreclosure list, and they charge you some sort of ridiculous monthly fee. And that's exactly what it is. It's ridiculous. So word to the wise, do not pay for this information. So I want to just say, kind of going forward here, that just because a homeowner has been served a lis pendens or a notice of default does not mean that their home is for sale. What has to happen from this point forward is, first and foremost, you have to determine whether or not you want to purchase the property, determine whether or not the seller is agreeable to sell it at a predetermined price. And then, most importantly, you have to make sure that you get through the process of satisfying that lien holder, whether it be the mortgage holder or that contractor we were talking about, or judgments filed against the homeowner, whatever the case might be. We have to make sure that we can get we can get you through the process. We have to satisfy those conditions before you purchase the property, especially if you're using a mortgage. So I want to get into that in greater detail in the next segment. I'm going to tell you how to approach these properties and hopefully purchase one. So again, if you'd like more information on the definition of a lis pendens or a notice of default, feel free to go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. I've got the PDF attachments all written up, ready to go, fully explained, listingsincharleston.com, or give me a call, 843-345-1273. And I'll be right back because I'm going to dedicate another segment to this. So you're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. I will be right back.
Have a real estate question? Ask Brian Beatty. Send him an email, lowcountryhomesales@gmail.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show is on 1250 WTMA. WTMA. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Welcome back. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. Thank you for joining me this morning. We have gone through a lot of information so far, and we're kind of just getting warmed up. Previously, we talked about just some financial questions, some thought-provoking questions to kind of get you in the mindset for today's show, because I've got a lot of information that I'm giving out. So thought it would also be nice to kind of make some interactive questions available to you. What we're talking about right now, if you're just joining us, is we're talking about those pre-foreclosure listings that you see on websites like Zillow and some of the other websites that are out there. And what we're trying to accomplish is determining whether or not one of these pre-foreclosure properties that you see is actually something you can purchase. And if so, how do you get through that process? Because they are, and I'm telling you right now, they are very complicated. So outside of all the information that I'm giving you, which you have access to if you go to my website, listingsincharleston.com, or give me a call, 843-345-1273. What I want to say is that if this is something you're interested in, please, please, please make sure you work with a real estate agent that fully understands this process. And they have to have a good attorney that can help identify whether or not the title to the property can be satisfied, whether you can be given a general warranty deed at closing. There's a lot that goes into this stuff, and it's difficult. They are difficult transactions, and I've been through dozens and dozens and dozens of them, probably close to 100 at this point, and I've represented about $100 million in real estate over the past several years. So if you want to identify properties, you want to learn more about the process, or you've identified a property and you want to purchase it, let me know, 843-345-1273. So we talked last segment about what a lis pendens is and what a notice of default is, and those are the two items that trigger Zillow to say this home is in pre-foreclosure. So it makes you think that it's something for sale, and of course pre-foreclosure is a buzzword. It's catchy and makes you think that you might have a real opportunity to get a steal. And you might, but I want to walk you through this process in greater detail. So first thing you want to do, I'm going to give you this process and I'm going to lay it out, is of course, number one, you want to start your search. You're going to look at websites like Zillow. You're going to contact a real estate agent, see if they have any unlisted deals, know of anybody that's in default, so on and so forth. So of course, you're just going to begin the search. Once you identify a property online or through tax records or what have you, you want to drive by that property, get a lay for the land, see if it's something that you're interested, see if the neighborhood is something that you'd consider, and just make sure that it's in decent condition as well, at least from the outside. You might not be able to get in. In fact, of course, if they live there, chances are you're not going to be able to knock on the door and say, hey, I noticed your home is in pre-foreclosure. Can I walk through it? That probably won't happen. So just do your research, drive by, take a look at the property, and then get a status update. The best way to do that is to either contact a real estate agent or contact a real estate attorney, have them pull title on the property. Let's see what's going on. Let's see why it's in pre-foreclosure. Maybe they're just late on their payments and they've been served a foreclosure notice. Maybe a mechanic's lien has been placed on the property to where, they did a large renovation and they didn't pay the contractor, and the contractor went and they filed a lien against the property to, when that property sells, that contractor gets paid. And there's a variety of ways in which this pre-foreclosure can be triggered. So that's the best thing to do, is just contact really a real estate attorney and do a title search. After that, let's say you're interested in the property, contact a real estate agent. See what kind of value they're going to place on that property. It might be that that house is worth $500,000, but because of the issue that the seller is in, they may take less. Let's say that you come to them with $400,000 cash, and that's enough to pay off the lien on the property and satisfy any other condition that's affecting title to it, and that's good enough for them. It's easy. They don't have to pay a bunch of real estate commissions, so on and so forth. That might be the case. Of course, it might not be the case, and it's a lot more difficult than it sounds. But contact a real estate agent, contact me, and let me give you my opinion of value on that property. Number 5, do some math. Figure out whether it makes more sense for you to pay cash or to get a mortgage on the property. And the best way to do that is to just contact the lender. I've got a great list of contacts for people that lend on all different kinds of scenarios, from a renovation loan to a new build, all kinds of good stuff. So best thing to do there is just contact the lender and say, this is what I'm considering doing. Help walk me through the process. What am I looking at from a closing costs standpoint? What down payment do I need? And that's also why it's good to involve a real estate agent, because when we comment on things like condition, that's going to dictate the type of loan that property is eligible for. So then after you've done all your homework, the next step is to, of course, contact the homeowner. Let's see if they're interested in selling. Let's see if we can create some sort of arrangement to where they get out of the mess they're in. You get to purchase a property under fair market value, and it's a win-win for all parties, and it's a win-win for the real estate agent as well, because they've helped a seller out of a bad situation, and they've helped a buyer purchase a home. Of course, after you contact the homeowner, we'll view the property. We'll take some very detailed notes before we make an offer. We're going to take all that information into consideration. We're going to do an appraisal on the property. We're going to discuss terms with the homeowner. We're going to try and figure out what their situation is, what is it that's affecting them, and what's most important to them. Maybe it's that they need to pay off their lien, whatever that lien is, but they also need 90 days after that to close because they have nowhere to live. And, so maybe as part of your contract with them, you say, well, if you close on your property, we'll let you rent the property back for 2 months for $1 a month. There's all kinds of creative stuff that you can do. I've seen just about everything in the $100 million or so that I've represented over the past few years. So there are all kinds of terms that you can put into a real estate contract. And that, quite honestly, is one of the most fun things about my job is taking one person's situation, taking the other person's situation, creating a strategy to accomplish both goals. And, of course, for my client, making it feel like we got the better side of the deal. So, of course, after you make the offer, you have to make sure that contractually you are protected. And this is why I say work with a real estate agent that has a good relationship with the attorney, that can construct a agreement that really protects you and that has realistic timeframes associated with it. When we do something like a short sale, which I have done dozens and dozens and dozens of, the contract that you write has to be somewhat fluid, but there's also got to be some drop dead dates in there. So for me, when I represent a buyer, it's a lot different from when I represent a seller. When I represent a buyer, I have specific deadlines in there that state you have 5 days from ratification of the agreement to submit the entire short sale package to the lender, which means the homeowner needs to get moving on collecting all their documentation and getting it ready to get the process started. For the first 60 days, if we don't have a short sale approval, I want the right to back out of the contract at no penalty, if something else were to arise. Now, if I'm a seller or I'm representing a seller, I'm going to say, hey, you have to give us at least 60 days before you can just unilaterally back out of the contract. So it depends on who you represent, of course, but the point there is just to work with a real estate agent that understands how to contractually protect you and your best interests, because that's what you're hiring the real estate agent to do. And then finally, you get to closing, you make sure that everything goes smoothly and that you get that general warranty deed. It could end up being that you get a special warranty, or if you're paying cash, maybe you agree to a quitclaim deed. And that would, of course, be the riskiest method to purchasing the property, because you're basically inheriting any lien, judgment, or cloud on title to that property. But it might be that's part of the strategy, and that's part of the negotiation process and part of the terms that you connected with that homeowner about that makes the most sense for them and for the deal in general. So I say all this to just say that these are very complicated deals. Just because you see pre-foreclosure on Zillow doesn't mean that it's for sale and that you can contact a real estate agent, go see it, and buy it. It is a lot more detailed than that. So again, if you have any interest in these types of deals, which are unlisted deals, please contact me, 843-345-1273, or visit my website, listingsincharleston.com. All right, so coming up next, I'm going to continue on this path of talking with this real estate giant Zillow and the opportunities that they've created for buyers with the pre-foreclosures, and then the opportunities they've created for sellers with providing the Zestimate, the Zillow estimate, what Zillow thinks your home is worth. So I'm going to kind of unravel that process. I'm going to show you exactly how they do it. Well, not exactly, because they use proprietary formulas, but I'm going to tell you how it works, so that when you're looking at Zillow estimates and you're sitting down with a real estate agent, you say, well, Zillow says it's worth, you're going to understand why. So stick around, because we're going to get into that in the last segment. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA, and I'll be right back for our final segment.
Find Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues next on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Now, the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues on Charleston's Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I appreciate you spending some time with me to talk all things real estate here in the Low Country. If there's anything that I talked about in the previous 3 segments that you'd like more information on, we talked about the pre-foreclosure listings on Zillow, what they are, how they are kind of laid out on Zillow, why they're showing up as a pre-foreclosure, and it's because of the Liz pendants or the notice of default that's been filed against that property or against that homeowner as it relates to that property. So if you'd like any of that information, again, it's easy for me to just send it off to you, or for us to have a conversation about it, because I bring everything in here in PDF form, and I just kind of read off my notes as we're chatting here. So that website, if you want to contact me, listingsincharleston.com, and on there you can search the MLS, you can request a time to meet with me, send me a note. You can look at my active and sold listings, and you can learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee at 4.5% commission if you click on the sellers tab. So that website, listingsincharleston.com, or call me 843-345-1273. So we were talking about how to find those unlisted deals, how to find those really good deals that just don't seem to be around as much these days because they're not. So you need to be a bit creative in the way that you find these deals, where are the good deals? And I want to add one more thing before I move on and explain to you what a Zestimate is, the Zillow estimate for your home. And I just, this number is a bit staggering, even to me, but last year, or the past 12 months, I have generated 250,000 clicks on my properties. 250,000 people clicked on my properties for more information. So think about that for a second. I am in contact with people on a day-to-day basis that are considering buying or selling a home. So one of the best ways to find unlisted deals is to connect with a real estate agent that's doing a ton of business. Last year, we sold about $20 million in real estate, and I've represented $100 million in real estate over the past few years, and I've been in the top 1% of agents since 2009 in our market. I don't say that to boast. I say that to mean that I am in touch with such a high level of prospects that it's a lot of fun when I can match up a buyer that I meet with a seller that I meet and create an immediate sale. So think about that as you're kind of looking online and looking for these deals. Feel free to connect with me, and I'll walk you through that process on the pre-foreclosure, or of course, just listen to what you're looking for or what you're trying to sell, and see if I can match you up with somebody. So moving on, this is I love talking about this stuff because I'm meeting with so many homeowners right now that have had their home on the market for the past 6-12 months. It expired from the market at the end of the year. They're fed up, they're burned out, they're kind of sick of the process, and they want to sell their house. And so we sit down with them. I do a consultative interview with them. I find out what went right, what went wrong, how I can help, how my marketing can be applied to kind of adjust things, create more opportunities for showings. And one of the things that I'm running into a lot right now, and this is what happens when we get into markets that start to swing upward, is that all the new agents are ready for listings. They're ready to work with sellers. And unfortunately, a large percentage of the listings in our market are grossly overpriced. And it's, so here's the mentality of a newer agent. And I'm not, we were all new agents at one point, right? So I'm not slighting newer agents. But what I'm saying is that they might be desperate enough for your listing to where they're either going to tell you what you want to hear, or they frankly don't care what the initial listing price of your house is. As long as they get the opportunity to work with you and demonstrate their value over time, that's what they're going to do. So they're going to take your listing no matter what. And does that really serve your best interest? Well, not when I sit down with a seller and I said, hey, you had your home on the market for 9 months, and I got to be straightforward with you because that's just the way that I approach these things. Your home was overpriced by about 15%. And this is what's happened in the market since. Our market's gone up. So it could have been that when you initially listed, you were 20% overpriced. So one of the common reactions I get, well, Zillow says it's worth X. So let's talk about what that means. First and foremost, the Zillow estimate is simply an estimate on the valuation of your home, taking into consideration several things. If you go on Zillow's website and it shows you what a Zillow estimate is, this is public information. I've got it printed out if you want it. But this is what they say. They say this is what your home is worth, but don't rely on it because it all depends on proprietary formulas and information that may or may not be correct. Oh, and by the way, we're within 30% of the accuracy of what we think your home is worth. So I want to talk about a few things. Number one, the value range that Zillow uses to identify value for your property. What it says is, let's take the average $250,000 house. They're going to go down to $215,000 and they're going to go up to $290,000. I just mentioned that for the statistically minded people, which I am one of them. I am very much so a numbers person, which is, of course, helpful when I'm determining value for a home because I go through the appraisal process and I spend time making individual adjustments for upgrades, for lot size, for square footage, for the highly upgraded kitchen versus the not highly upgraded kitchen. It's a process. It's not just, well, this one down the street sold for $150 a square foot and you're a little nicer than that, so let's do $160 a square foot. It ain't that easy, folks. And so what Zillow says is that the value range is actually a 70% confidence interval. Number two, let's say that you look on Zillow and your Zillow estimate is way too high or it's way too low. It's just way out of whack. I have one of those. I have a condo that I own that I purchased at the height of the market for $140,000. It's probably worth $50,000 right now. I took a beating on it, but also the development took a beating because it went through litigation for years. And to make a long story short, they think my condo is worth about $40,000 more than what it's actually worth. So I guess that's right at that 30% standard deviation. But a few things to take into account when you're looking at the Zillow estimate. Number one, the price history and the tax history. We need to check to see if your price history, which is of course what you bought it for and when you bought it, and your tax history are the same and they're correct on Zillow. If there's a discrepancy, then Zillow's estimate for your home is going to be incorrect. Number two, and probably the most important, Zillow has no idea how many upgrades you've put in your home and what the condition of your home is. They have no way of doing that unless you update those facts individually on Zillow. So let's say you do a huge renovation on your house or you add square footage and that square footage isn't reported on tax records, or your brand new $100,000 kitchen is, didn't add any square footage. Zillow's not going to know that you did that. So that in and of itself is reason enough not to use the Zillow estimate. But you got to understand that they have no way of knowing that. It's just a website. So when homeowners say, well, Brian, Zillow says my home is worth X, and I really don't have any interest in selling it for your price, when Zillow and anybody looking on Zillow thinks it's worth this, why don't we just try this number? And this is where I have to be straightforward with homeowners, because so many agents are not, and say this is how you approach valuation, from a real estate agent standpoint or from an appraiser standpoint. This is what we use. This is what we look at to determine value. Now, having said that, an appraisal is very simply an opinion of value. It's just an opinion. So you could have one appraiser walk through your house and say it's worth $850. You could have a second appraiser walk through your house that same day and say it's worth $875. It's just the nature of the beast. It's an opinion of value. So when we look at things like a Zillow estimate, or we look at pricing your home based on what's sold, buyers are going to pay more for certain features and for certain things than other buyers will. So part of it is subjective, and it determines, or it's determined by how interested they are in your particular home. Just because your home has granite countertops and hardwood floors, and the other home has hardwood flooring and granite countertops, but the layouts are totally different, means that buyer is going to pay more for one than they would for another, because it meets their individual needs. So kind of getting back to the Zillow estimate, I'm pretty much done with how they determine it. We know that there's a 30% plus or minus deviation on the price that they give you. If your tax information isn't correct, which we run into all the time, misreported square footage it's a joke. You look at a house that's been on and off the market for 3 years, and each time the square footage changes, so homes grow and shrink these days, I guess. But when you look at things like a Zillow estimate, just understand that there are a lot of factors that come into play, and the bottom line is they're going to be 30% on one side or the other side of what it's worth. Sometimes they hit it dead on, and the more information they have, the better it's going to be for you. But the best thing to do if you're considering selling a home is to just contact a real estate agent, or if you want, just get an appraisal on the house. They'll be objective about providing you with an opinion of value. So I hope that all makes sense to you. There were a few things that I really wanted to get to this show, but as always, time flies when I'm having fun and talking about real estate here. So if there's anything that I can help you with, please feel free to call me at 843-345-1273, or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. You've been listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Thank you so much, and have a great weekend.
Join us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning from 8 till 9. Contact Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. 843-345-1273.